People is one of the hardest parts of being a boss, and employers have heard it all before. Sorry I'm late. It won't happen again. I need to take tomorrow off. I wish I could give you more notice. So for the day, I'll definitely have it to you next week. I'm not going to be able to stay for that late meeting. Can you fill me in? But here's what they might not have heard. I'm late because the neighbor who watches my daughter had an emergency. Again, I wish I could afford someone more reliable. I need to take tomorrow off to go to court because I got an eviction notice. I've tried everything to come up with a back rent, but I just can't keep up with the rent increases. The report's late because my 80-year-old dad has fallen twice this week, and I've been stressed out trying to find a care facility I can afford for him. I can't stay for the late meeting because the bus I take home stops running at 6 p.m. For workers dealing with home or life issues, or who struggle with the high cost of living, the day-to-day stress of trying to get by, much less get ahead, often shows up in the workplace, and the impact on them and your bottom line can be significant. Learn how United Way can help strengthen your employees and your business at uwcm.org.
I'm trying to think, is this good? I guess still good afternoon. It feels like it's evening. We've been setting up for so long. My name is Paul Capel, and I am President and CEO of Junior Achievement of Central Maryland. And I would like to welcome you, a very warm welcome to the Junior Achievement Youth Workforce and Innovation Center. Just by a show of hands, who's been here before? I know Corey has a few. Oh, well, good. Okay, so you have to promise. I mean, it's going to be a great program this afternoon and into early evening. But stick around for a few minutes if you can, because we're really proud of the work we do here. And you're going to see some really neat things in terms of how a lot of the topics we're discussing today really align with the importance of early intervention with students in terms of preparing them for the world of work and opportunities that might be ahead of them. So now I got to make sure I stick to the script and keep within my time. So first and most important, I want to thank our partners at both United Way and Baltimore Business Journal. Oftentimes we talk about wanting to collaborate, but I think today what you're going to see is what some of the power and impact of collaborations like that can look like, particularly when you hear from Franklin and Courtney as we move ahead in the program. So what is Junior Achievement? We are a social enterprise, and I think oftentimes it's easy to think about nonprofits or charities, but we really don't look at ourselves that way. We're a social enterprise that is really working to get investment into the future workforce of this region. And we feel the best way to prepare that future workforce is through programs that teach financial capability and entrepreneurial mindset and what it means to be successful in the world of work, whatever that means to you. And we do that through experiential learning programs with students ages 10 all the way up to young people 25. And we know that we are a proven provider of work readiness opportunities, and we do that through four things. First, providing that experiential real-world connectivity. If you stick around here for a few minutes today, you'll see it's very immersive in terms of not just what students learn, but how they apply what they've learned in real-world scenarios. Second, it's a deep understanding of the skill sets and mindsets that it takes to be successful in the world of work. And again, you're going to hear about being successful in the world of work a lot today. It's that long-standing trust and credibility among our partners that we kind of do what we say and we say what we do. And then lastly, we have a track record of proven success. And again, you'll see our partnerships with Baltimore City, Baltimore County School Districts, and then partners beyond just school systems such as United Way. If you get a chance to tour the facility, you'll see what happens here. You'll see that fifth grader that gets to become the CEO of Whiting Turner for a day. You get to see that seventh grader who really, for the first time, understands the connection between education and future earning power. That's 20,000 students a year that go through this facility on an annual basis. And then you combine that with another 15,000, particularly high school students, who do everything from their own startup to participating in virtual career fairs, and then doing job shadows at organizations like Coca-Cola and Under Armour. We know this approach works. We know that 69% of JA alumni describe themselves as being in their dream career, okay? And that is compared to only 25%. So only 1 in 4 of you right now feel like you're in your dream career. 73% of JA alumni work in their field of study. Now think about the financial implications where you go to college and get a degree in what you actually end up earning money in, as opposed to 27% of the national average. That means 73% of people go to college and don't even end up using their degree. That is a huge economic drain on our communities when those young people enter the workforce. And we help cultivate a pool of highly skilled, motivated, and a savvy workforce. And as we will talk about today, that can be so important in building strong workforces, strong companies, and strong communities. As I close, a little bit of a PSA. Again, we love to have partners participate in what we do. You'll get a chance to see Finance Park with a hands-on demonstration at the end of this program. We're always looking for volunteers. And again, you in the audience know as well or better than I, an employee that feels engaged in their company, that feels a sense of community or belonging with that company, oftentimes stays and is retained by that company. And of course, we'd love to see you at our JA Leading Ladies event on November the 14th. If you have any questions about any of those opportunities supporting junior achievement, please just see me after the program. Now we'll get to the part that we're here for today, and I'd like to introduce my good friend Courtney from the Baltimore Business Journal, who will get our event started. Courtney?
Thank you, Paul. And I would tell you that I'm one of the 4. I love my job. I'm in my dream job. So I am Courtney Bodie. I am the market president and publisher of the Baltimore Business Journal, and I would like to welcome everybody to the bottom line. Strong employees equals strong workplaces. So, I'm honored to be a part of this and to work with Franklin and Paul. The BDJ, we try to be steward of what it means to be a great places to work. Every year we publish a list of the best places to work awards, so it was a great place for us to be today. So today is focused on building stronger, healthier, and more equitable workplaces that fuel success for both employees and employers. We'll be exploring what many workers today are facing outside of work that can impact them on both the job and the many elements that go into creating work environments that support both business leaders and teams. We'll highlight effective practices on some of Greater Baltimore's best places to work programs that support employees in and out of the workplace, and how to engage young people in emerging and expanding fields in our region. Our hope is in these conversations, they are a start or maybe a continuation of the conversations taking place in your workplace. So without further ado, United Way of Central Maryland has long been a champion of hardworking people in our region for nearly 100 years. It's my honor to introduce President and CEO Franklin Baker, who will share a little bit about who United Way serves and why, and to launch our first panel discussion. So Franklin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Absolutely pitiful. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you happy to be here? Pretend for the next couple hours. Glad to see all of you, and thank you so much for being a part of this important conversation. And that's what it is. It's really a conversation. It's adults. I love adult learning, because adult learning means everyone assumes people have information and knowledge. We're just sharing what we know, what we experience. And hopefully it in some ways bleeds into your further learning, and it helps you in some way, but also me, and also our panelists, and everyone who's a part of this conversation will walk out better for having been here today. Does that make sense? So we are, at United Way, we really do work to advance what you see on this sign. We want to advance opportunity and equity. We also want to advance access for every single person we serve in our region. That's so important for us. It shows up in different manners, different places, differently. But it's all about providing these 3 things. All the work we do centers around that as a goal. How do we increase access, opportunity, and equity? So as was mentioned by Paul, if every one of our neighbors are strong, it means strong neighborhoods and a stronger economy, stronger Maryland, stronger region. So important. And we do that really by making people safe. Safe housing, a job that can pay the bills, right? Making sure they have transportation to get to and fro. how do we stabilize the mental health concerns? We saw that during the pandemic when lots and lots of people were worried, concerned about what does it mean for me and my family, calling our 211 helpline to get assistance. How does that work for them as individuals? So our job is to make sure we bring stability, we break down barriers, we create additional sense of, I can do this. In fact, our governor says, whenever he's doing United Way events, he says this statement because it's all about us working together, which is why we have BBJ, why we have incredible leader Paul doing good work here at Junior Achievement, and so many of you representatives. When we are united, we can't lose. When we are divided, we can't win. That's why this conversation is important, because everything we'll hear from all of our guests or panelists and the questions we may hear from you at the end, it's all about how do we learn to work together. There's no big I's, no little U's. Everyone in this room has value, worth, and you have perspective. It's lived, it's where you grew up, it's how you grew up, it's what you have access to. Bring that to the conversation today. We're just excited about the folks who will be sharing that today. For nearly a century, as you said, Courtney, it's really amazing to say that out loud. I have my board chair here to say that out loud. We're turning the corner, literally. 100 years in the market, 1929, we were in this market doing really good work, providing three things: what's needed, where it's needed, but also when it's needed. So that's so important to us. So today's focus is the workplace. That is a big word. That is a mouthful. Every single one of us here today walk into your workplace, whether you're the owner or you're the secretary or you're the person behind the scenes, research. Every one of us walk into a workplace bringing what? Ourselves. May have been an argument, may have gotten into almost an accident driving in, walking into the workplace. The workplace is a huge space for us to understand. There's been many of us before, each one of us in the room trying to understand that dynamic, the workplace. So we're going to talk a lot today about what that means. So as Courtney mentioned, ALICE is a term hopefully all of us will become more familiar with today and beyond. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained Employee. These are people working 1, 2, 3 jobs, but still can't keep pace with the state's high cost of living. In the state of Maryland, different than New Jersey, but in the state of Maryland, we have over 2.3 million households, 900,000 of which are ALICE. They are working very diligently. These are essential workers that literally can't make sure they cover the essentials in their life. Right? And that should be striking to some of us who are not familiar with this term. And that's what we've been tracking for the last many years. So we know that it is really tough for a lot of people to survive, right? It's very difficult. For example, a job paying, say, $50,000, right, or $60,000 is likely fair compensation of a certain position. But for a sole earner in a family of 4 here in Central Maryland, get this, it takes $80,000 minimum just to survive, let alone to begin to thrive. So our job here is to talk about what we can do to improve the plight of these individuals, particularly as they show up in the workplace from day to day. So in our state, 39%, 2 out of 5 households are ALICE, right? They're under the radar screen. Many of us employers in the room, we have a good segment of our workers who are meeting that definition of ALICE. They have lots of pride, dignity, worth, right? And we should treat them, every single person, with dignity and respect, but they're struggling, right? They're just trying to make ends meet. So our job is to understand this in a little deeper way. So our first panel will share with you in more detail the challenges that are faced by ALICE workers, what needs to change to really just help them on a stronger path, and some ideas we hope that will help all of us as we think about improving the work scenario for them. So we'll ask our panelists to come up now. We have them, Karen here, and April, and Wendy, if you'll come up now and have a seat, and we'll hand you the mic as we're posing questions, but we will ask you each to briefly has quotes around it, briefly introduce yourself to the audience today. We're grateful for your presence. You got water there? Okay, excellent. Just introduce yourself and how your work relates to today's discussion, because we handpicked each of you for a specific reason. And we're grateful for your presence. If you'll just share from your perspective how your work, after introducing yourself, how your work relates to this discussion.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Franklin, and thank you to all of our friends at the United Way Central Maryland team and our new friends at the UBJ and Junior Achievement. I'm Kieran Honda-Gaglioso. I'm the CEO of United Way Northern New Jersey and the president of United for Alice. I'm part of the United Way network along with this United Way, and we are the local United Way that operates the National Research and Analytics project called United for Alice. So we get to work in partnership with folks here in Maryland, as well as 35 states across the United States. I think you said it, Franklin. You know, when we think about our workforce and the essential workers that really stood up for us during the pandemic, we know that we need Alice. We need Alice workers in the care economy, working in hospitals and assisted livings and nursing homes. We need Alice in our child care centers and our out-of-school time programs. We need Alice, obviously, in our retail and service economy. You know, we need the Alice workers. We all rely on Alice. They are the mainstay of our economy. And so I think one of the questions hopefully we'll get to today is, you know, how do we support Alice so that Alice doesn't struggle as much as she or he currently struggles, and has at the end of the week, you know, very difficult decisions to make, whether to buy medicine, buy shoes, buy groceries, pay rent, pay a utility. It's really about, you know, when Alice is able to have stability and their family is able to be cared for, then that has a multiplier effect on all of our economy. And we talk a lot about how when, you know, Alice struggles, we all struggle. And we really saw that during the pandemic. We almost felt it, about 2 weeks ago with the strikes, and we knew what that domino effect, multiplier effect was potentially going to be. So I think for us, you know, one of the things I think a lot about every day is making sure we're continually centering Alice in our economy and not acting like these workers are people that are choosing to struggle, choosing to be, you know, working 2 or 3 jobs. You know, these are folks who are struggling, but yet doing their very best, and we need to constantly focus on how we can support them. Hey, good afternoon. Still no excitement, that's okay. My name is Amber Lugo. I am the Senior Manager for Inclusive Diversity and Equity for the Allstate Corporation. And so my role is to really focus on how we're creating equity for our employees and our customers. The Alice piece is really critical because typically those employees are frontline staff and they're the face of all companies, the people you see and conversate with when you're interacting with most organizations. I'm also the EVP for Alpha Baltimore, which is the Association of Latino Professionals for America. If you don't know us, find me after this. And I think for me, a huge passion, besides being Boricua, Latina, Puerto Rican, very proud, is a lot of Latinas face huge wage gaps. And so the organization's dedicated to supporting Latinos kind of advancing their careers and really break poverty and build wealth. I was recently at a women's conference and I left really angry because Latina women make 53 cents on the dollar that every white man makes. Latina Equal Pay Day just passed October 3rd. It took up to October 3rd of 2024 for Latinas to make what white men made in 2023. The median wealth for Latina single women is $1,000. The median wealth, $1,000. That means over half of women have less than $1,000 in wealth that are Latina. And so when we think about that community, how are we really leveraging and understanding them to make sure that they're not in those positions?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, all right, listen, by the end of this, you're gonna be screaming and shouting. So, I'm Wendy Deese, I'm Vice President of Public Policy and Economic Advancement for United Way of Central Maryland. And so in a lot of ways, both of my jobs impact a lot of aspects of life. When I look at the public policy perspective, we can't do this work alone, and people's lives can't change unless we get the right policies and the right bills on the books to ease the burden. So the work that I'm involved with as it relates to Alice is really trying to help our elected officials understand Alice, understand the issues, help them to see that the issues that are addressing aren't just issues. There are people at the end of that road who are going to be impacted by those decisions. And so one of the things that we really are trying to do is make sure that the legislation that we support is human-centered, because without that, we all lose our dignity. And the other part of it is in the workforce development space. When I started down this path anyway, I was looking at the work that we were doing. One of the things that I said was that we do more than just workforce development. We're looking at the economic advancement and opportunities for people, and our approach needs to be more long-term and systemic. And so that's kind of the focus of our work and the things that we believe will have a significant impact on those who are living as Alice.
Thank you to our guests. You see why we picked all three of them? So my question to you, Karen, is you were at the heart and center. You weren't the CEO at the time. I think you were COO, but you're at the heart and center of this whole movement, Alice movement, which became United for Alice. So share with the group what the Alice movement is and why the pandemic was so important for the movement.
So as Franklin said, the movement really started in New Jersey, and I was sharing with my new friend that our United Way at the time was really just looking to understand what was going on in our community. Very high wealth pockets of New Jersey, and our board and staff at the time, we were seeing tremendous demand for services, childcare, medicine assistance, housing supports, all the things that we know about. And so we, took a step back and leaned on our volunteers and an economist at the time, Dr. Stephanie Hoops, who I know many of you know here in the room, who was a professor at Rutgers and worked with a team of researchers and graduate students to build the Alice methodology, which really is just matching local wage with local cost of living. And the core of the data is really building what we call the Alice survival budget. And it's really a local number as opposed to the federal poverty level, which is one number no matter where you live in the country. And so what we've been able to do is, extend the research and the data to United Ways and foundations and governments and businesses all over the country that are part of the United Way network and who all really want to focus on really understanding the needs specifically for Alice and families in poverty, but then also, to Wendy's point and April's point, really want to drive solutions and programs and interventions to help serve Alice. We know that there are 54 million households in the United States that fall below the Alice threshold. So that's either Alice or in poverty. In New Jersey, it's 37% Alice in poverty. I think you guys are 39, right? 39. So right around there. And when you think about what that data tells us, it's not something that's really discussed. Right? Because you don't really see who Alice is. There are folks that, really are at the center of disaster recovery and response. We're seeing that now. There are folks that also during a disaster can't get to work, but yet somehow figure out how to get through. And so, as Franklin said, over the last 17 years, we've built this Alice movement in partnership with United Ways and other stakeholders across the country. And our big goal right now is to make the Alice survival budget this country's measure of financial hardship and to stop using the federal poverty level, which is antiquated and not relevant.
That's awesome. That was awesome. So thank you so much for that. And just an addendum, she won't share this, but there are 30 states in the country that are part of the Alice movement. 35 now. Okay, I got the label. 35.
We haven't talked in a couple
I know. So 35. And the other thing is, correct me on the number, my latest number was over 700 United Ways, over 1,000 United Ways in the country. Over 700 United Ways are part of the movement in 35 states. Okay, all right. So the movement is happening. It's real, and it means more people are awakened to what they can do personally as an organization to really make this movement work. So April, I want to just pivot to you. So you and your work are very privy to some of the challenges, some of the barriers, right? Some of the formidable challenges that a lot of Allison workers face. Can you just talk a little bit about, from your lens, what are some of those barriers like? And you have a very unique perspective.
All right, great. I think I'm going to answer this question twofold, starting with the personal piece. My mother had me when she was 14 years old, and so I know what it's like to live in Alice. I saw my mother work 2-3 jobs her entire life and constantly stress about how to keep the lights on, how to keep us fed, how to keep clothes on our back. I think it's what created my drive in this equity space. And it's interesting because I kind of grew up with my mom at that age. You know, she's 14, I was, we were growing up together. And now she's married, stable house environment, and you know what she's doing? Going back to college, getting her degree in HR. Yeah, she's a straight A student at Penn State University, and it's not that she wasn't capable back then, it's that when you're in crisis, all you're thinking about is the crisis. You're not gonna pause and think 6 months from now because I need to survive today. And so seeing her in this new environment, it's interesting because I knew she always could, now she can. And I use the analogy of if someone's robbing your house, you're not thinking about upgrading your security system. You're thinking about survival. And bringing that into the professional space, when I'm working with senior leaders and advising on their employee base, what I've noticed is there's such a disconnect between senior leaders and frontline employees. A lot of senior leaders are coming from generations of wealth, their parents went to college, they've always known college, and they take a paternalistic approach to their employees, which is, I know what's best for you because I'm better in some way, and I'm gonna show you what to do. And they create all these wonderful programs that are not accessible to these employees or not reliable. We think about tuition reimbursement. I don't have $5,000 to give to get reimbursed, so it's not useful to me. But that comes from disconnect and that paternalistic approach. How do we engage employees in decision making? Because I'm Latina, I have to mention. There's a cultural lens as well. When I think about my mom immigrated here when she was 12 years old, and there's so many cultural pieces with immigrating here. First, second, third gen in the country, you're taking the values of your country here and you don't know what your rights are, what you're entitled to, how to navigate. Even when I have conversations with my family about pushing back or asking my senior leader a question, they're like, don't do that, they're gonna fire you. They can't just fire me, like that's not a thing. I have rights. But they come from places where those rights don't exist. And so how do we really engage these employees differently? And adding like language barrier and accentness and the perceptions that people who have accents are less intelligent, it really creates the perfect kind of chaos for them to not be able to break those barriers.
I wanted you to keep going, but I'm looking at my timekeeper. So, if after the session today you have questions, say go deeper, April, go deeper. She'll be available. As it relates to public policy and advocacy, Wendy, obviously I'm down on the hill with you and we're doing the rounds with legislative officials. How do we bring it home to them and make it clear, whether it's tools or reports or information, how do we actually put fuel to them to take action? And you've been doing a lot of this work with some of your team members that are here. We'd love to hear that.
So one of the things that I would say is that Alice was a great start for us. We were able to really describe the situation of those who were struggling. But our United Way recognized that there was another part of the story that we needed to tell, and that story was around the benefits cliff. Because many of the people who we are serving are recipients of some type of public benefit. And so we spent the time to have a study conducted. And between the benefits cliff and the Alice report, we had some pretty significant and substantial information that we could share with our elected officials, because we are in the streets, we are right next to the people working with them in their neighborhoods and communities. We bring a fresh and a different perspective than a lot of others can bring to our elected officials. And if you could just bear with me as I share a story. So we're gonna call this person Alice. It's about as original as I can get. Alicia. Okay. Alicia is struggling financially. Okay? She's behind in her rent because she was late picking up her child from childcare. So of course she had to pay a penalty. She was late getting to childcare to pick up her child because she had to work late at work. Why did she have to work late at work? Because she was late getting there that morning and she couldn't leave before she had put in those 8 hours. Well, why was she late to work? She was late to work because her car broke down. She doesn't have any money to get the car fixed and certainly isn't going to be able to purchase a new vehicle to provide for her family. So life happens. And oftentimes for Alice, it is it's a domino effect. And when you're talking to elected officials, oftentimes they're looking at one issue or the other. We've got to blend it together. We've got to show them the connectivity. We can't just address health today, education tomorrow, and housing the next day. We've got to be able to look at it from a holistic perspective, get to the root cause of what the issues are, and then we can begin to talk about solutions.
Great story. I remember Alicia. I remember her. So from your lens, Karen, part of the value of partnering with you and this entire movement, being a part of it, is every 2 years we get an update. Every 2 years we get an update of new information, latest, greatest information on the ground, neighborhood center, et cetera. But also, laced on top of that, is the various lenses that your organization does with the comparison between white, Black, Latinx, et cetera, and also comparison in terms of like the health statistics that matter, all those things that we think about sometimes we don't really focus on, the children, status of the children in Alice. So I wanted you to maybe just share either off the cuff or just what you know, this sense of the differences between those groups and why is that so important for us to track when you think about the people that are Alice, but they come from a different platform, right?
Thank you for that question, because I wanted to talk about the disproportionate impact that we see on Black and Brown households, right? So we know that 62% of households that are Alice are also Black, 57% are Latino or Latina. So we know it's not a question. We know that there's a disproportionate impact, and we track that over time. Those numbers have not gone down; they are going up. We're seeing the numbers among Latino families increasing at a greater rate than our Black households. So we know, and when we wonder, I think April said it best. A lot of the policies and practices that reinforce a lack of access to education, opportunity, and equity, are really rooted in systemic racism and institutional racism. And so we know that the impact on our communities then is generational, multi-sector, and to Wendy's point, has to be addressed from all different vantage points.
I know you probably could go on longer because there's
Yes,
so much
but
there. There's a lot of there.
I see.
So April, from your lens, when you think about the complexity of the challenges that our Alice workers face, right? What are you doing, or your team, those working with you, doing to somehow unravel some of these complexities or help people to deal with some of the complexities of this plight that they're facing, right? When I think about the homeless population in Baltimore, they do a point in time count. Marie, you're very familiar with this, and somewhere around, you're 2-1, somewhere around 2,200, 2,100 people at that point in time, January, February, when it's cold, meet the formal definition of chronically homeless. And then outside of that number, there's probably another 45 to 50,000 people in Baltimore that all it takes is one little event. And now all of a sudden they're falling back into that number. And so there's a lot of complexity around ALICE workers, right, and ALICE families. Talk about kind of what are you doing and team members working with you doing to try to help with that.
This is such a great question. I think, yes, there's a lot of complexity. I don't want to undermine how complex the issue is, but I also think there's a lot of simplicity as well. And I think a lot of organizations are so uncomfortable having these conversations with these workers because it is awkward, right? To have these personal dialogues around childcare and finances and homelessness. And sometimes it's easier not to ask. But I think the key point, and I kind of hinted to this earlier, is if we stop this paternalistic approach of let me do this for you, I am not going to include you in the conversation, includes these workers and individuals in the solution, often those solutions are going to be tangible. I use this example, there was a food bank in the inner city serving a Latino community and nobody was going to it. But a lot of those families were ALICE families. Why? Because the foods weren't things they ate. So they replaced it with tortilla shells and salsa and rice and beans. And suddenly everyone was going to the center. You know how they solved for this? They just asked people why they weren't going. Right? It's so simple, but because we're uncomfortable, we won't step into these spaces. I see my timer, ma'am, so I will wrap it. Okay. I was like, man, that was fast. Okay, and then I also think another piece is to the point when we have generational knowledge, we understand where we come from. I think for me, what has led me to excel in the equity space is I came from so much disadvantage. And so when I'm working with disability communities or Latino communities or with women, I know what those experiences are, and it's easier to bring ideas that are tangible. I even sometimes talk to my family and ask them what they think about what I'm working on, right? And so I think that's what we need to focus on, is how to step away from paternalism into collaboration with these employees.
Thank you so much for that. It's so much there, but I love your alternative view. Yes, there are lots of complexities that we go into in depth, but there's also simple things we can do, right? And when I think about what you oversee economic advancement, and public policy, and this whole space, and you've been in this for a while, can you tell this wonderful audience kind of what do you think we could think about in terms of a program? Because there's been many programs you've touched over the time. You've been engaged, a program that's either been around a long time or just emerging, you're excited about, that you think could be one tool or one helpful way to increase what happens from a success perspective in the workplace?
Work with me, Lexi. So I'm just going to jump to the end in terms of what I'm excited about. For the last several years, we've been in search of a model that we could replicate here in Central Maryland that could really be a game changer for our workforce. And I was sharing with Maria earlier that when I started down this road, employers were saying, we can't find good employees. Guess what they're saying today? The same thing. When you talk to the workforce trainers, we're training all these people and nobody's hiring. Somewhere along the line, there's gotta be a bridge that brings it together, and I think that we've landed on that. So about 20 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Mark Peters established a model called The Source. And The Source was providing in-house resource navigators to help people address many of the barriers and challenges that we've talked about so far. And so we're calling our model Workways. What happens with Workways? Well, when we identify a partner, we will develop a schedule where our resource navigator is actually on site so that employees get to know that individual. They begin to develop trust. And as they are encountering situations like Alicia, there's someone that is on staff or on site who can assist them Now, I'm imagining that many of you in the audience are responsible with people or work in the HR space. Think of the time that you're spending helping people, counseling people, trying to find resources for people. And when you look at, when you're talking to your boss and they're saying, well, why isn't this getting done or whatever, how can you really not justify, but how do you get the help that you need so that you can be devoted to your job and get the help that the employees need? And so we're very excited about this model, and we're so excited that we chose to actually launch it and pilot it at United Way. And so we launched it in March. We have a little over 200 employees, and so far, as of 7 months, we have reached 17% of our workforce. Now, many people would not think that Alice works there. Alice is everywhere. Alice is an essential worker, and Alice is also others who are just challenged at some point in time to do what they need to do. And just to share with you the things that we're hearing from our workforce is mental health and housing are tied for number 1. Tied for number 2, I wrote this, is financial wellness and education. And tied for 3rd place, legal services and food security. It's the same thing that Alice is looking for. It's the same thing many of us are looking for. We just don't know what resources are available. We don't know where to turn, and we don't know what's available. And that's what Workways is all about. Connecting the people to the resources to get the help that they need so they can free up all of you to do the jobs that were designed for you, while also helping that employee navigate the challenges that they're facing.
Thank you, Whitney. I want to double click on that just for a second before I go to you, Karen, to start wrapping up. And that is, something happened on March 27th, 2 a.m. in Baltimore. I see a show of hands. You know what I'm referring to? The bridge collapsed, right? And there are many Latinx folks that were either directly connected because of death of one of the workers, or connected in terms of, that's my uncle, that's my cousin, this person helps me to be employed, rippling effects from that incident. And there's so many needs that we can identify, Wendy, in this space as a direct result of things like this. Can you just talk just a little bit longer around kind of why getting this Workways program up and running and companies beginning to sign up, and how it's so important to not just this sense of the folks who are first line, first defense, but a lot of other people you described. There's so many people that could use and benefit from the type of resources that are being available.
So, Karen, you said that when we struggle, Alice struggles more. Well, when we bleed, Alice hemorrhages. And, when you think about the pandemic, and if you think about the bridge collapse, literally, we were on the brink of a hemorrhage of people who had no place to go because they couldn't keep a roof over their heads, children, family. Everyone basically has been impacted by the crises. And guess what, folks? If you've lived over these last, 2 weeks, these crises are continuing to come. And we can't afford to have people struggling. Ryan, our chair, board chair, said, Wendy, why are people coming? Why are they seeking help? Because they always needed the help. They just didn't know where to go. And this is a lifeline for our employees. So Gallup does a workforce study every year, and they look at productivity. And part of it is to look at, put a dollar figure on the loss of productivity of workers because of all of the interruptions and challenges that they're facing. Does anyone want to guess what the figure is for 2024? How much in dollars of productivity is lost And this is a global number. Anyone want to throw out a figure?
30 billion.
Okay, nice guess. Anyone else? You ready? $8.9 trillion are lost globally on productivity. Okay, if that's not enough to want to do something, then I don't know what else to say. People need help. People sitting next to you, people working next to you, the accountant, the doctor. Let's not discount them. And let's not go in there looking for some downtrodden person who may be hungry this morning because they ran out of oatmeal. It's anybody at any time. The crises are not stopping. They're not slowing down. We gotta help people.
Thank you so much, Wendy. If we had more time, I would ask you to continue because that's just an important point. And so in closing, I just want to ask Karen, kind of in how we began, if you will, right? You have led this incredible movement through your team. It's yielding phenomenal results from a public policy perspective, just from a change in the nomenclature perspective, right? When we think about what we have traditionally known as poverty in the methodology since 1953, and now we have this new way of looking at the people who are struggling. What are your kind of hopes for the future as it relates to, yes, we want 35 to 50 states to be a part of the movement, we want 700 united ways to 1,000 plus, right? But what's kind of your hope relative to how this movement can really help the plight of these individuals and households that we label as balance?
Thank you. That is the question, right? I think it's the, what was it, 9 trillion? 8.9 trillion. So I think that's the $8.9 trillion question for us. But, you know, when we think about where we are now in this movement and what we're seeing, I think the thing that gives me hope and that gets me excited is the solutions and the interventions and the supports, like Workways, like a program we operate called Alice at Work. It's really about what we're doing as a movement, as a network, with partners like all of you and many others to really drive change. The data sets the table, it tells us what's happening, it gives us perspective, but it's the solutions and the actions that allow us to really make change. And I think we're seeing tremendous innovation. The pandemic forced innovation for so many of us. And so we really know we can make a difference. It's about how we do it.
I want to give it up for our three panelists. They're going to remain seated for a few minutes. We learned a lot, not just stats, Paul, right? But we learned some stories. Alicia, you can remember that, what she dealt with. But a lot of you, as I said at the beginning, have lots and lots of knowledge and lots of touch points along your journey. People always say, oh, there's 6 degrees of separation. Not from my perspective. It's probably like 1 or 2 max degrees of separation. You think about relating to others and being in a position that you can empathize for the situation. So I just want to hear from a few of you for the time we have. Keep me on point, Alexi. For the time we have relative to asking a question of the panelists or myself, we want to try to address that as quickly as we can and then turn it over to the next panel. Questions, popcorn, raise your hand. We won't bring you a mic, just stand, use your outside voice. We'll be okay with that. It's a small enough room. Just please stand, state who you are, please, and then we'll try to restate the question if we can. If you don't mind, please stand, yeah.
Yes, so I'm Keisha Henry, and I'm Janet Schultz, and Alicia used to work for me. And, you know, I was really empathetic to Alicia, but the hotel's a 7-day, 24-hour operation. And it wasn't just that one day Alicia's car broke down. And last week, it was something else, right? And while I don't feel like these are true crises, okay, having been there at one point in my life, right? So I understand it. So the programs that you talk about, Alice, which by the way, first time I'm hearing it, right?
And my team members, by the way, check the box. One of the things we wanted to hear is people coming here today never heard and get the information. So thank you all team members. But continue.
So with your win that you mentioned,
Yeah.
what type of services or resources, how can we, because at the end of the day, right, I'm being held accountable to keep the hotel door open, to make the money that we need to make. Somebody has to work the front desk, somebody has to clean the room, somebody, you know, these are so yeah, your stuff is real, but I also have a job. So how does Alice connect with the workforce, right? So that we're able to maybe, you know, oh, and Alicia is Jamaican like me. So very prideful, right? So you could mention these things, but Alicia may never make that phone call.
Thank you. I think we heard the question. Somebody want to respond? I'm sure each one of you have a perspective.
I just want to say that oftentimes Alicia doesn't have an accountability partner. You know, no one's really kind of saying to Alicia, you know, you can do better. Let's talk about how we can get there. I'm going to work with you and we're going to take small steps together and celebrate the wins. Now, that's not ideal for you because you got to keep the door open. But clearly, we're here for you to be able to find a way and identify a way that we can help Alicia. We can't save everyone,
Right.
but we can certainly put a dent in some of the losses.
Can I just also say, as you heard her say earlier, so I'm listening. I do listen, Wendy. She said 17% of our over 200 employees at United of Central Maryland have agreed to connect with one of our incredible guides, the people that are just doing phenomenal work to help with the journey, to answer questions, and point them to resources, navigators. But that number probably, if we're honest with ourselves, should be higher than that. Because there are people with pride, or if I'm seen talking to a navigator, I'm a director, and I have this posture, right, Lily, and I have everything intact, right? And if I divulge that, and this is outside of human resources, this is going to a navigator to help me confidentially to deal with the issue I'm facing. So the reality is the need is often always greater than the people actually tap in. So it's just very interesting thing. But one more response.
I think a piece of it though is the kind of leader you want to be, right? I think it's really easy to push people out and replace them with people who do better. And I use this example, I had an employee who gave me a run for the money. Like, she had such a temper and she would flip out in client meetings and lose her control and yell at me. And I was like, Lord, give me the strength. But I asked myself, what kind of leader do I want to be? And we sat down, we talked probably for like 3 hours, and I found out she had some trauma that she had never dealt with, and certain things triggered her. And we came up with a plan to help her be more productive. She was one of the most productive employees I had. And to this day, she says I was the best manager she's ever had. And she talks very highly of me. In the beginning, she talked very negatively of you. But I think it's very easy to replace. But once you build that bridge, the loyalty that's there, that's hard to buy.
Invest.
So all the questions, unfortunately, because of the time that we'll be able to take, but there will be time after the next panel for questions. So give it up for the panel. Thank you all so much. Now, let's move on to our next discussion, which will be moderated by none other than Courtney Bode. We're actually asked her to come up now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Franklin. And those are good questions, and we've got a panel that's going to help answer some of these questions too. So workplace culture and employee needs are an ever-changing activity. What does it take to help your teams bring their best to the workplace? How can we build stronger, healthier, and more equitable workplaces and engage your young people in our region's emerging and expanding fields? What are effective practices among some of Greater Baltimore's best places to work? Let's find it. Come on up, panel. All right, first we're gonna go down the line and introduce yourselves, but first off, thank you for being here. So tell us who you are and a little bit about your role.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Roars, and I'm with United Way of Northern New Jersey. I work with the United for Alice team, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategies for Alice. Kieran kind of gave a nod to one of the programs that I work with, which is called United for Alice at Work. And we also have a child care initiative called United in Care that also focuses on Alice. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Juan Webster. I'm the Senior Corporate Director of Social Impact for Montage International. That is the parent company to Sagamore Pincher Baltimore. For the last 5.5 years, I served as a general manager of the Sagamore Pincher Baltimore. Miss Keisha, hear me? I hear you. We're gonna talk. We're gonna unpack it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, thank you. Trying to make sure you're awake since we're the next panel. I am Valda Coriat. I lead the North America marketing for condiments and sauces at McCormick. And I am also a board member of none other than the building you're sitting in. So Junior Achievement.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marie Hartman, and I am one of the co-founders and executive vice president of a company called Hartman Executive Advisors. We are an independent technology leadership firm, and we work for CEOs and presidents across 7 industries. And our employees are across the country, but we are a small firm in that we have about 120 employees who work for us, but we have other team members too that are part-time as well as contractors. So we, because of the industries that we work in, there's not one organization that's not having labor issues. So this is near and dear to a lot of the clients who we work for. So thank you for introducing all of us.
Okay, so we're gonna start by talking about some of the industries that have Alice workers, and I think United Way planted Keisha in the audience for us. So, one, you employ a number of Alice workers. Keisha alluded to some of the problems, but why don't you talk us through some of the issues that you face, and then talk about how the culture played a big role too.
Thank you for the question. I think when people think of hospitality, one of the largest sectors of employment really across the globe, but particularly tourism and hospitality go hand in hand. And I think that when you think of a hotel specifically, we impact the community, we impact the workforce. One of the biggest drivers why hotels are created is because there is an impact instantly. Jobs are created, so forth and so on. I think one of the challenges faced, specifically speaking in Sagamore Pincher Baltimore, we're introducing a luxury hotel product into a market that doesn't have a ton of luxury hotels. So you're talking about a learning curve, an opportunity, and now our job is to face this audience of strangers and give them a first impression of what luxury hospitality looks like. And for a large part, that is a daunting task because there's a training element, there's a service element, there is an awareness element. And I think we have not been met without some of the challenges, whether that be transportation to work, or whether that be other things that people are dealing with just to get there. I always remind people that you have no idea what people have to go through just to get to that door to serve other people. Hospitality in general, I think sometimes as we are celebrators, we're cheerleaders, most of it usually leads to like something positive. You're welcoming and it's warm, it's kind. But what we don't know is that there are a lot of times in those 8, 10, 12, how many hours that associate is going to serve, this is the safest place that an associate is going to be during that time period. This is the only place where they're going to be celebrated and not tolerated. This is the only place where you have a sense of community, where someone's going to acknowledge you and give you the spirit that you need in a short amount of time. So that leads right into culture. So the opportunity we have often with culture is when you have a good culture and you can have those associates be anchors and cheerleaders in the time that we have together, I think what's important is you give them something to give back of themselves, and you, one way or another, take care of each other. Sorry, my time is up. I got a lot more to say.
So Michelle, we'll move to you. Are there strong examples of companies that are trying to address the issues of helping ALICE workers that you'd like to lift up?
Yeah, and I think I'd like to start by just saying that we need to have our community employers, the businesses, really be a part of the solution. Oftentimes, we talk, Wendy, programs that social service agencies or government runs. But I think as we move forward to this ALICE movement, bringing together all of you in this room and our business partners is really, really critical. And so having conversations about strategies that work is really important, and sharing them with others that they can replicate them across various industries. I'll give a couple of real quick examples that, oftentimes we think that ALICE needs a higher salary, higher wages, right? And of course that would be a great solution if we could do it. But there's some solutions that don't cost any money. Sometimes looking at how we're scheduling our employees and looking at, if they are commuting on a bus line, that they don't have to go an hour early to make sure that they get there on time, but maybe shift our schedules 15 minutes after the hour so that when the bus arrives, they're not late. Other things, like looking at family composition, and if there's ways to work around childcare. We know that childcare is one of the highest budget items for an ALICE family, and sometimes working out creative solutions about how we can help families close that gap as well. We work with a home health agency in New Jersey where the employer sat down with his employees and found out that they had dual household workers at his agency, and in working with those employees ended up working out a schedule that one parent worked one shift, the other parent another shift, and that they had some crossover in between time to make sure that they could spend some meal time together. It cost the agency no money to do that, but it saved that family thousands of dollars in childcare costs that they didn't have in their pockets. And so at the end of the day, ALICE won, but the employer won as well, because like the example of the employee being the star employee, I think you mentioned that, and these became the shining star employees for that company as well. So there's strategies, and the more that we can work together and share those things with each other, we'll be able to build stronger businesses, and which ultimately builds a stronger economy.
So let's find out how these companies and United for ALICE are working to create a more diverse and equitable workplace. We'll start with you, Valda. What training is necessary to incorporate ALICE workers into the workforce? And what are the soft skills needed prior to entering corporate America? I know you can speak directly, personally to this.
Well, first I'm going to give a quick context to who I am, because I mentioned what I do with McCormick, but I'm also an immigrant myself, the child of immigrants. My father was one of 11. My maternal grandmother was one of 14. And so when I say that, I tell people, and I have 3 children of my own, all Gen Z. Anyone who interacts with Gen Z knows what I'm talking about, right? And so I bring that up because I think at the base of everything that we do as leaders is humanity. How well do we know the people that we are leading, the people that we are responsible for, right? So when you say soft skills, I think I actually want to look to the people in charge first and foremost. What kind of cultural training are they receiving, right? The example you gave exactly of why they were not coming was because it's not the food that they eat. I can tell you that my family, even if they were starving, if you're not serving what they want to eat, they're not coming, right? They will make do with what they have, and there is a pride there. So the soft skills, I think, starts with training the trainer, right? Or training the people in charge for cultural sensitivity, for inserting that humanity over profit, because you can't have the profit if you don't have the people, right? And then in terms of the actual ALICE workers, my 30 seconds I see, I actually came up, my family did not have experience in multi-billion-dollar companies.
And the way that I was prepared was programs like Junior Achievement of Central Maryland, right? Understanding that, I actually was an Inroads alumna, okay? And so as an Inroads alumna, I was taught about the appropriateness of things you do at a cocktail party. You are not there to eat everything that is on the platter, even if you are hungry, okay? You nibble and you sip and you are there to meet people. So programs like Junior Achievement of Central Maryland, Inroads, and others, the sooner that we connect with these young people, the sooner we give them the soft skills. But my real, message to leave with you all is, I think let's think about training the other way too.
Does anybody else want to touch on
this? I think with some of the soft skills, and like I said, we were having an earlier conversation, Maria and I, and when we first got here, and talk about like the importance of eye contact. Some of those social skills that our young people today are so into their tablets and their phones and looking downward. My colleagues and I took the train up today, and I tell you, everybody on the train was looking down. Nobody had any idea what stops we were at, what beautiful scenery we were passing, the fall foliage. So eye contact is such an important thing. It's part of communicating. And we don't teach our young people about that today. And in fact, us older people are becoming, subjects of not doing that as well. So we need to teach the soft skills.
So the U.S. economy has been in the headlines quite a bit recently, from market reports driven by fear to issues that hit closer to home, like somebody had mentioned, the port strike earlier. Economic issues are at the forefront of the news right now. So Michelle, what would it mean for the workforce and the economy to be able to include more workers who have life challenges that keep them from succeeding?
Well, the short answer there is that the more that we can keep our workforce employed, the better it is. They will, contribute to our economy with taxes and certainly the income that they're generating, they'll purchase in the community and the like. So it's just really important to keep folks employed. And I think someone touched on it earlier in the panel about sometimes it's easy to let people go, April said, right? But when we really look at the hard dollars and cents, it's actually more expensive to let those folks go. We have to pay for recruitment and training and all of that time. And the other folks that are on staff have to pick up the slack when there's a vacancy. So if we sometimes sit back and actually crunch those numbers a little bit more, we're gonna see that even giving folks a little bit more of a raise is gonna actually save us in the long run, dollars and cents. So it's a good business case to actually invest in your ALICE employees and keep them there.
That's a great transition. Marie, I'm going to go to you. So you had an expansive onboarding process. So can you talk to us about what it means to invest in your employees and empowering your employees to go for the promotion?
I was wondering if you were going to ask me the question or want me to just jump in. But I wanted to agree with everything that's been said up here because I do agree that it starts from the top. When an employee or a team member is a new hire at Hartman, we want that new member to know that this is a two-way relationship. And so Dave and I started the company 20 years ago as a husband and wife team. And we both, each individually, meet with every single employee that comes to our team. And the value of that is that we're building a relationship. And not only am I very vulnerable from the get-go, I tell them why the company started, how, and I hope you pardon my French, how it was a shit show with the two of us on, very successful careers. But, once you started to have kids, I was working for a Fortune 100 company, and my boss called his kids Kid 1 and Kid 2. So there was no vulnerability on my part, to be able to understand, trust that he would understand me. But so that vulnerability allows us to build a relationship, and bridge to me is a verb, and it's a two-way relationship. And as it relates to the promotion, a lot of people have said to me, Marie, I'm going to pull you up and get to the next level. But a lot of people have also stopped me from getting to that next level. So I've done a lot of studying, reading about promotions, and one of the books that I would love for you guys to read as employers and is called The Confidence Code, and it's written by Claire Shipman and Katie Kay. And essentially the study was, why is there such a huge gap between the number of men in leadership positions versus the number of women? And so the study encouraged employers to encourage women who were qualified for those promotions to actually put their name in the hat. What they found out when they started to talk to people, that women thought they had to have every single criteria in that job description in order to put their name in the hat, whereas men, no slight against men, but they had no fear. They were like 30% qualified, and they put their name in the hat. By statistically, that means more men were in leadership positions. So the point being is that whether it's Alice or whether it's a woman, we as employers really need to understand who are the stars and be the bridge to tell them and encourage them to reach for that new level. So thank you. I know you've been trying to get this done. Thank you.
Juan, I'll start with you, and I'd like each of you to answer this. So what could employers be doing right now to recruit and retain Alice workers?
I think you first need to understand the needs of your organization. And a lot of times when you don't know that and you just want to hire someone to fill that position, you miss the opportunity to have a long-term investment. I really think retention is just as important as recruitment. And for the most part, I think when you have a strong workplace culture, you have a thriving workplace, and ultimately that scorecard that Matt heard, the scorecard term used earlier, is a thriving scorecard because everyone's individually invested. Everyone's celebrated. Everyone feels like they are a stakeholder and a shareholder, regardless if you're the doorman, the dishwasher, the housekeeper, the room attendant, or a front desk agent. I think there are equal opportunities, and I think we do that in such a way. We spend time before they get hired, but I think before you show up at a career fair, you also have to know who are we looking for? What are we willing to invest in that person? How much time are we willing to bring? Because not everyone's going to jump on board and be a manager immediately, and there's levels to it. I think you have to understand, especially in the hospitality industry, one of the things we look for that is not truly a skill set is character skills, soft skills. How are you coachable? I mean, thing like, do you have a sense of awareness, and can you adjust to the ever-evolving, changing industry that we're in? And I think I would rather take the risk on that associate and work with them to build them into a career versus this person can come in right away and start doing something that they've been doing the last 20 years at a location. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm talking about a sustainable pipeline. I think those things are necessary.
I have an easy answer to that one, I think. Ask an Alice worker for a referral. So one of the things that I recognize, and McCormick is over 13,000 employees. I have North America responsibilities, but I also go to Latin America as well. I was there last week. People come into companies and there are communities that are formed. You spend so many hours at work that you will find a bestie, right? Likely someone who is at your level, maybe not above. If you're lucky, you get a mentor or a sponsor, as I have. But community is really important to a lot of these workers that we are talking about. When you say Black and brown, they have communities at church, they have communities through their country of origin, through language. So if you want Alice workers to thrive, believe it or not, counterintuitively maybe, you may need more Alice workers that know the workers you have. And as you develop and grow the ones that you have, they will also share what they've learned with who they've brought in because they want them to succeed as well. And I know this because my mother worked in a community development agency, and I remember them allowing her to bring me to events and to the office. And I watched the power of that. And she taught me the responsibility that I had because of the privilege that I had to be learning these skills before
the audience that was in front of me, so I was younger than the rest of them, I was a little person sitting there, that I had a responsibility to teach and to bring others along with me. So for me, I think that's what it is. Recognize that within your organizations, there are communities, and as long as people feel a sense of belonging with at least one other person in that organization, then they probably will thrive and perform better. So one of the things that we have at Hartman is called the Book of Dreams. And let's face it, everybody needs a salary. Everybody needs a job. But one of the conversations we have right away is, what are you trying to accomplish and experiences for you and your family? And so this is an elective at Hartman, but 100% of people want to get their own page in this Book of Dreams. And it is both inspiring and humbling to know that Dave and I have 120 people's family's dreams riding on our dream. And so it affects the decisions that we make. It affects the way we show up and the way we want to lead. And we also use that book as a way for people to get to know one another. And so you get real fast at Hartman. We don't waste time. And because the power of relationships is exactly what everyone is looking for, we have an ambassador program. So every new person gets an ambassador, but that sole job is to be a friend to that person. So then when they walk into this room of high-performing people that they think are better than them, they realize, hey, they're just normal with the same kinds of anxieties and challenges that we all have. So I do think that, one of the things that, as everyone was saying, some of the things are not expensive. They are really just the humanity of it all. And so I think a lot of you all in this room are decision makers. And I think that hopefully these are some of the things that will be helpful as you navigate the real challenges in building the business case for retention and for recruitment within, and not just looking outside, but also to the impact, the financial impact that it has, one organization at a time. In the world that I live in, working for CEOs, you've got to know your numbers, you have to build the business case, and I think that's part of the bridge and the communication that we have is, in addition to advocating, is also one business at a time, understanding the net impact on their growth, because you will get the leader's attention.
And if I could just for 1 second. So Maria, I really love that you have that dream book. But think about that dream. Do you think Alice dreams about living paycheck to paycheck? Nobody dreams of being Alice. So I think your question initially, Courtney, about how do we recruit Alice? I think we shouldn't be setting out to recruit Alice. We should be building up Alice so that Alice isn't struggling paycheck to paycheck anymore. And one other piece that is building on kind of the professional development pieces. We talk about kind of this upward mobility and ladder climbing, right? In our Alice at Work circles, we talk about career bouldering. Sometimes being belonging in a company and succeeding is maybe moving parallel to another position where you can try out different skills or, just become a different person, share the skills that you already have. And so, I think we need to think about professional development sometimes in a different way as well. And, for longstanding, retention of employees, if someone's at a hotel and a housekeeping job for years and years, maybe there's another opportunity at the front desk. That may be a lateral move, but it might give them, a different sense of purpose. So I think we talk about strategies and ways to keep our employees engaged, meet them where they're at, that they feel a sense of belonging, but also that they're seen for the individual people that they actually are.
That's a good segue. So we talked about some of the common barriers faced by Alice workers. Let's talk about the importance of empathy by managers. Juan, you talked about this. So what empathy skills do employers need to develop in order to employ and retain Alice workers and understand their challenges?
I think knowing your associates, this is similar to what you said earlier. I think it's the best way to have a thriving workplace. And I think empathy will go so far. And I think knowing what they're going through, being able to meet them at that level. And one thing about leadership in this space, especially when you're leading Alice Associates, is you cannot lead and manage everyone the same. Everyone needs a little something different each and every day. And I think you have to explain that and be willing to get there. And what's always helpful, and it's not always an opportunity to do so, but anytime you have a lived experience, I relate most to my associates because I've also been Alice. I've also been in a struggling position. I also started from a bottom level of work, but I can relate to an associate because I'm not just coming in and telling them what they should do. I've lived that, and I have people in my circle and my family that have also lived that experience. It's about connectability, and whenever you can, and relatability. Whenever you can have that connection, I think you are not only going to get the most out of that associate in terms of how they show up, but I think the empathy part is the strongest and biggest way to create a sense of belonging, which I've also heard today. And you create that sense of belonging by being understanding, being empathetic. And there are times when you can manage up and manage down. There's times when you have to be able to be versatile enough to find productivity still, because at the end of the day, we are coming to do a job. But I think in a workplace that thrives, it has to start and end with the empathy. No matter what, we're relatable, regardless of your position, your tenure at work, where you come from. I think that's really important.
I think we've seen some great examples too of people that have been promoted, right? So if you're promoted, you've been through the experience, you can help people out. So Marie, I want to talk to you about United Way's 30/30 experience. You've been a part of their experience. So tell us how it worked and how successful do you think it was in building awareness of the challenges that Alice workers face and in fostering empathy?
First of all,
I forgot to mention that I've had the honor of serving on the United Way Central Maryland Board for many years. And the catalyst for that was that Franklin and I became friends at a leadership program where I experienced the 30/30 program. And let me tell you, it changed the way I want to lead. It was that impactful and transformative. Why? Because it helped me to discern the difference between excuses and real life problems that I just had no idea about. And in the 30/30 experience, you take on a persona of someone who is Alice, and you go through the day of what this person who you become has to go through when they miss the bus and don't get up there on time to get the opportunity to have an interview. And now they've got, bills, childcare. It is a real eye-opening experience. And one of the things that it really impacted for Dave and me, because both of us went through the 30/30 experience, is that a lot of things. So, for example, at Hartman, we are always looking for the best and the most talented because of the work that we do. But we noticed, if you looked at our website maybe 7 years ago, it was mostly white male men. And there's nothing wrong with that, because let me just start up front. They are talented. They know how to get the work done. But the 30/30 experience helped me understand that, hey, we still want the best and the brightest, but how are we looking for those people? Are we in this kind of habit that we need to expand the way in which we search for the best talent? And ironically, we were working for a lot of amazing organizations. So we created the Leadership Development Program, which is creating the technology leaders of the future. And for the first time in the history of Hartman, we were seeking a diverse group of young people from non-technical backgrounds. And we were exposing them to the different tracks that you can experience in the field of technology. But more importantly, we also created things like the Dream, Believe, Achieve speaker series, of which Franklin has been a speaker. It's an opportunity for me to play Oprah, but the beauty is that I get to ask Franklin and the speakers who are representing a diverse group of people who look like the people in the leadership development program about their path to leadership. So number one, people see that it's not a 2-year journey like Gen X thinks that they, okay, I'll be the leader. That's exactly right. But they also see that it is not a linear experience, that sometimes you have to go sideways to go forward, and sometimes you have to understand the perspective of what it takes to be in that position, and that the opportunity in front of you is what you need to take advantage of and do that great now, because that's what opens the door to the next good move. So the Dream, Believe, Achieve Speaker Series, the Leadership Development Program, the way in which we hire, all were impacted by that 30-30 experience. So I encourage our clients, we work for the #1 nursing school in the country, and their 3 lines of business have a lot to do with social determinants of health. They get $20 million of funding from the NIH and the CDC. They have a simulation lab because of the labor issues. They have a teaching, curriculum, and they're trying to double the number of students to go through that. But you think of a nurse in a hospital setting is different than a nurse in a federally qualified health center or a nurse in a senior living. So not only do you have to understand the various types of nursing, a cardiac nurse is different than a cancer nurse, but you have to also understand the environment that you're in. And I talk about the United Way of Central Maryland, their 30-30 experience, because I do think it helps to refine the way we develop the leaders of the future.
Franklin said it earlier that adults are always learning, and the 30-30 experience is a great way for you to learn through experiential learning and see what these ALICE workers go through. So we've got one more question, and then we're going to do a quick Q&A. So Valda, this one's for you. So what makes a good manager in a company? What makes them stand apart from others, and how does this affect the worker who's struggling to enter and stay in the workforce?
It ties back to my point on humanity, right, and building relationship with your employees. I love the Dream Book, but I think when you're a manager and you can give your employee license to speak beyond the task that you pay them for, as right, something bigger than themselves, it opens up the relationship in a way that really transcends just a worker-manager perspective. The other thing I would say is, watch for things. If you notice that they are coming in late all the time, ask the question, why? Children are great at being curious and asking why, right? Assume good intent, right? So a good employee, when I can build that relationship, and I have many, many times, I understand oftentimes people have to be vulnerable to share with you what's really the reason why they are not prompt or not delivering on work, and sometimes the way that I do it is I'm vulnerable. I tell them about my story, right? Or when I started in corporate America, gosh, that time goes by so fast. To share that, you may see me at this level and wow, I'm doing all these things that you think are amazing, but I didn't start that way, right? And I had to share my fears and my dreams, by the way, with someone. And because those people cared, then we sort of worked together. And there's some of those mentors and people that have been key in my life that I'm still in touch with, that I've known since I was 16 years old. That's the impact, right? So a really great manager is someone who connects on a human level, who allows themselves to be vulnerable, to give their employee license to do the same. And then, of course, from there, shows them the path to success. And, by the way, also opens doors for them and picks up the phone on their behalf. I'll tell you, there's a nonprofit that one of my daughters works with. You'd be amazed how that monthly cycle affects some young women.
if they don't have what they need to show up in a way that they feel clean, right, and presentable, that could affect a lot of things. And then I think the other thing is share with them, what does success look like in your organization? Because every company, every office of a company has a different culture, and successful people have a bit of a profile in that office. It doesn't mean they have to change themselves. They just have to know, they have to go in eyes wide open and know the environment that they're operating in, right? And each of us makes choices about, how much we're willing to, bend a little bit or not. So it's relationship, connect on a human level. We are not perfect, they are not perfect, and let's just walk this journey called life together.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one or two questions. Stand up and introduce yourself and speak loud.
Hi, I'm Matt. I work with Catalan Enterprises. We do government contracting and we work with commercial companies for moving and light construction. And I'm also a real estate agent, and I've done projects for flips of historic renovations and things of that nature. So I'm Alice. I actually am like a true Alice, because I am part-time if I'm employed, and everything else, I'm an entrepreneur. The people who I work with are, yo necesito usar Duolingo todos los días porque yo no hablo español. Or even with French for like the Senegalese dudes who I pick up at Home Depot. I constantly, like, if you had care.com, if you had Angie's List, if you had LinkedIn, all of these are sites where people try to promote themselves, but they have to pay added amounts of money to be like, hi, look at me, look at my picture. And I had to be like, hey, you guys, like, get your Instagram, show like a really good video that you can like edge up to the ceiling without getting your paint onto the white ceiling and messing something up, or show that you can cook this, or you can do this without charring up the frying pan. I did 23 years in restaurants. I'm moving on to construction and doing real estate and dealing with contracts and movers. Everyone who I work with is an Alice because we can't employ them full time. It's only gig economy. So if everyone who kind of has an education or is really getting up there on these other websites, like LinkedIn, which are kind of fluffy that these big businesses look at, how do we get these other guys who like walk in the back door to say like, look at me, I know like we might have a language barrier, but like this is what I can do. This is my beautiful work, this is my craft, things of that nature. And then is there like another way to gossip with other employers? Like, okay, in Senegal, they're really a seamstress, so you might want to use them for like hanging the curtains, don't have them paint, but so-and-so, you can have them paint. Like, is there a way to like really keep up like dialogue with all of these different people? And for me, in certain places, if I'm working with a manager who's like, or a business owner who's like, they suck, they're horrible to play, I'm like, are you giving them enough to live on life? Or like, do we need to like adhere to their schedule so that then they can go get to where they need to get, or wash dishes someplace so they got a roof over their head in the wintertime with food coming off that grill, and then enough to get on the bus to get home? Like, I don't like how there's like there are some people who do not make as much, and they're not going to yet. Like, they're not going to jump into the executive position or a higher dollar amount job. How would employers kind of say, oh, they're good, look at this, let me share this person? How, I'll have suggestions?
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
I believe, and please correct me, your question is, how do people get known who are Alice if they're doing a great job? Is that the question?
And then sometimes some of the Alice people, yes, get known, and sometimes like they're not going to have enough opportunities to get known, and then they're back to square one, catching yellow bus back over to Home Depot, sitting on the curb.
Yes.
Until another week picks them up. So
Yes, and so my answer to you is, and I'm only going to go from the lens of my own experience because I am lucky enough to have a cleaning lady, and that cleaning lady helps me to be whole. Okay, because we work a lot, we travel a lot, we've got a lot going on. But the thing that she asked me to do, she said, I lost 2 accounts. Would you be able to help me to introduce me to other people? And that simple question, I was like, heck yeah. And all I have to do is text a couple gals, and before she knew it, she had more opportunities. So my answer to you is about that confidence to just ask, right? Because people do care, and people do want women who are cleaning your house to succeed. Because if you fail, then that impacts all of us, right? And so my answer to you is to encourage people, to let people know, if you are happy with the work that I'm doing, would you tell a couple friends and introduce me? And I think that is something that many people would say yes to. You don't need LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think if I could add to that, what I heard from you as well is it's almost as if they're in need of a skill of how to market themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so I think what's interesting there is, I don't know if you would, but a lot of times students, the college campuses do a lot of outreach to the community and community service. I certainly know in terms of sororities and so forth that there's a lot of that happens who might be able to do it for free. And obviously there's organizations that maybe speak the language, right, of the people that you're talking about that also can offer those services. So it might be a little more work on you to refer them to those services. But I think what you're giving back to us is we need to communicate with each other, right, in terms of organizations to recognize that the population you're talking about is actually out there and they're going to need even more help to even know about what they could do in the future. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I take them to the library and because you're free Wi-Fi, free computer, all that, try, but I don't know.
And this isn't an answer to your question, but you did mention the gig economy, which relates to part-time workers, and we know Alice works 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 jobs. I put this out to us as the audience. What policy changes can we look at that support people that do not have traditional full-time jobs? When we look at healthcare, childcare, other public supports that are out there, sometimes to access public supports, you need to be working a certain number of hours and document it in a certain type of way. Maybe there's changes that need to happen at that level as well.
Time for one more.
I want to comment based on what she said and based on me hearing what the panel had to say. I'm actually the Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Corporation. And we're a community resource where we help with training, where we deal with the Alice population, because we all are Alice population, because we are one step away. Yeah. So if you all need services, if you all need your employees trained, leading to certifications, go to the local American Job Center and get them help. You can go to the local American Job Center even on your own if you're Alice. I have individuals just like us on my caseload. I'm a lead career coach.
Do y'all do OSHA for free?
We do OSHA training.
For free?
We do free training.
Yes! Okay.
But there is a process. I just wanted to make sure I say that because we are here not only for the businesses, we are also here for the citizens of each county, whether it's Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County. Every county in the country has an American Job Center that you all can use as businesses. Even if you all have employees that need training leading to certifications, we help with that. But we also do the job readiness training for the citizens that come in that are the Alice population. And we help them get back to work. Some of us are job developers. Some of us are business and industry team, but we do the work for you all. We are the middleman, right? So when you all say soft skills, we do that. We prepare them for work. When you all looking for somebody that's job ready, we make sure that they're job ready. And in some cases, we stick to them for 18 months. So even if you hire that person, you got somebody to feed off, to say, this is what's going on with this person that you're working with. So just look at it a little bit different, I guess I'm saying to you all as in businesses. You all are actually the Alice population. Look at the hurricanes, those people came Alice overnight. So when I look at somebody and they sit across from me, they are just like me. There's no difference, because life happens. I just wanted to make sure I said that to you all.
Thank you for that. So I think one of the big key takeaways is, like all things in life, whether you have kids, whether you're married, whether you're an employer, you have to communicate, right? You need to ask the questions, like what do they need? What's going on with you? Ask for the referrals. I think those are huge takeaways. And I mean, there's plenty of resources out here. It's just connecting one another. Well, let's give our panel a round of applause. Before we jump into Finance Park for an experience, I would like to introduce Ryan Cowdon, founder of Plano Cowdon Construction and chair of the United Way Central Maryland Board of Directors.
Thank you, Courtney, and thanks again to all of our panelists, this one and the one before, some great conversations and some inspirations. I think we can all agree that we learned a lot today about Alice workers, who they are, why they're important to our businesses and our economy overall, and how we can support them. We're hoping you took some good notes down today, or at least have some ideas in your head of some action items that you can take that back to your business to implement. If you didn't, on the back of your program, we have some action items noted for you to take home with you. Alice workers are so critical to our economy. They are the fuel that helps us navigate our everyday lives with ease, and are the backbone to so many local businesses, corporations, and industries. They contribute mightily to ensuring that our businesses and lives run smoothly. Investing in Alice gives these crucial employees the opportunity to thrive, creating a work environment that supports them and values their important contributions, and it improves your bottom line. It is imperative that we support their success, because they are integral to our success and to the economic stability, strength, and resiliency of the greater Baltimore area. To learn more, all of the Alice reports and the tools mentioned today are available on United Way's website. Just go to uwcm.org/Alice and take advantage of these amazing resources that United Way shares freely so that others can gain greater insights and take action to support Alice. So thank you all for being here with us today. Looking forward to participating in the Junior Achievement Experience at Finance Park, which is right behind us. And I'd like to welcome at this time Paul Apple to come back and wrap us up.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and bear with us as we kind of do a few logistics here. We hope you can stick around for a few extra minutes. You know, the stat was given before from the Gallup information about the things that really cause anxiety among many of our employees in our organizations. And financial capability was at the top, I think. And so this is just a peek into how you can start to teach young people, although I gotta be honest, I don't know that there's a time that we ever have in which a volunteer who participates in this program with the young people doesn't come up to us and say, I forgot that I'm supposed to do this stuff too. You know, the idea of building a budget seems to be something we all forget from time to time. So again, if you have a few extra minutes, stick around. And I know that we've got some food in there too. So, you know, if it's not Finance Park, let's make it, Franklin stayed up all night making this food. So stick around and enjoy. Thank you.